Guys, Mike Kemp here with Alyson Sheppard. We came to RunLab today in Austin to do metabolic testing. And I'll let Alyson talk about what that is, what we just did on the treadmill, why we did it. But I'm an Ironman athlete, now 6 months away from neck surgery for a broken neck from a cycling accident. We're at a point where I can do a lot of speed work to try to work on things like my VO2max, my VLA, and basically just try to get faster as a runner. This is running specifically. You can also do it in cycling.
Yep.
This was the most important for me now. We started the Ironman build 20 weeks out from the race, which is Ironman Texas, April 18. We're now 12 weeks out. So this is going to be great data for me, and I'll let Alyson talk about that. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So doing metabolic testing, really beneficial for anybody. If you are trying to train for even a 5K, 10K, all the way up to, Mike training for a full Ironman, you can do ultra, anything like that. Mainly looking at making sure you're not undertraining or overtraining your energy systems as well. So, you have two energy systems that work when you exercise, and what we do is dial in specifically how efficient and how strong those energy systems are working together. So what we're looking at today is, yes, VO2, which is your aerobic energy system. Anaerobic energy system is going to be VLamax is the number that we're going to take a look at, and both of those will create your threshold. So FTP for cyclists, anaerobic threshold for runners as well. So what we're doing is really trying to get the most accurate picture to help Mike figure out pacing strategies, fueling strategies. So we're going to get grams of carbohydrates per hour based on heart rate zones, based on the pace, since we did running today. But if he does cycling, we would get based on wattage as well. And this really just helps, again, give a blueprint and a roadmap to then take to his coach and really dial in a much more specific and accurate training program for him. Pacing questions for you.
Sure.
Easy run. You gave me that information.
Yep.
When's the last track workout you did?
Last Wednesday.
Okay. What were those distances, paces? Do you know?
6 by 800. Those 800s are between 6:50 and 7 minutes.
Okay.
That puts me around 155 to 160 heart rate, which is about close to sort of tempo for me.
Okay.
I think what Garmin at least says is probably like 163 would be my threshold.
Okay.
Again, I don't know how accurate that is, but I would say I'm working pretty hard from 155 to 160, but I can hold it for 800s.
Okay. So, and I'll have you warm up here, but what I'm thinking is starting you around a 7-minute pace. Do we feel like that's too conservative?
I can definitely hold that for 6 minutes. Like if you were to ask me to do maybe mile repeats, I would probably want it around 7.
Okay.
And I would be feeling at the last quarter mile of that would be relatively tough.
Okay. Yeah, and then build up as long as you're okay with potentially doing a couple extra 6-minute efforts.
Yeah,
but,
sure. I mean, ideally we'll get it locked in sooner. But yeah, I can.
Yeah. I don't think it'll be too conservative. Really, what's going to happen is it's either going to be eye-opening where, hey, you've built a great base, and where you've been doing some short work at is actually still considered, on that comfort zone 2 side. So what I want to do is be able to provide just some clarity on where some gray area might be. So where that zone 3 might be, we'll get a definite number there. Lactic acid wise, and then be able to say, actually, this is pretty high in comparison, or hey, you're still pretty efficient here. You really need to ramp it up once you start, doing more in-depth training.
Awesome.
So let's go ahead and at least do a little bit of a warm up. Just get oxygen back into those legs. Did you notice any compensation, running-wise, cycling-wise, through recovery?
Because of my injuries?
Yeah.
So I've seen Dr. Murray here at RunLab 3 times now, and I wouldn't say my neck and thoracic has compromised me much, but that previous tibia injury,
Yeah.
we're learning that I
Yep.
definitely have a lack of strength on my right side that's
Say
not
you can-
allowing me to pop up quite as much.
Good. So after each phase, right, we're going to take a sample here.
Okay.
And then we're not going to start the next one until your lactic acid reading is at resting.
Okay.
Okay, so that gives us just a clean slate each time.
And do we know what my resting is?
So generally speaking, 2.5 is usually around resting, but for our software, we can do it at 3.5 at each one. So 1.3, it's great. So ideally, with each phase that we do, we have to have a level at 3.5 or higher
Okay.
for it to be, or 2.5 really, to be readable,
accurate.
because resting is like 2.5. So that warm up that you did, you're at 1.3. It's excellent.
Okay.
Below resting, actually, right? So great place to be. Cool. So whenever you're good to go, just click that enter button.
Okay.
I will shut it down at 6 minutes. Your job is just to run. Cool. Okay. Good. Alright. On your long runs or on your speed work, do you typically feel more lungs or legs fatigue?
Good question. Lungs on my speed work,
Okay.
legs on a long run,
Okay.
but legs only come in later in the run, the last few miles. Right now, 12 today that I did was the longest since breaking my neck, so the last 3 were definitely hard.
Harder. Okay.
And I imagine now every time we add a mile or 2, it'll just be those last few miles that feel heavy
Gotcha.
legs.
Yep.
Speed work is a lung thing.
All right.
Just learning to get comfortable at a...
4. First one was 3.
What were you hoping for?
So
A little higher?
about 3.5 actually. So, I mean, just what that tells me is even within 1 minute, your body is utilizing lactic acid. Like it's utilizing as energy and fuel essentially.
Is that
That's
good?
why we went from 3 to 2.4, right? Yeah, absolutely.
You want it to clear quicker?
Yeah, you want a quick clearance there. So yeah, it's
So
great.
you would have wanted the first reading to be a 3.5? Means we need
No,
to push
not
harder?
necessarily.
Okay.
Really, the goal of the first one is to get close to threshold. But personally, what I find is if we can get a little below, that's ideal because then we have, a more specific area of where a zone 2, zone 3 range will be, and then we really know going forward, it's going to be harder on you, right? Because now we know we're going to go beyond threshold. But if our first one was 6, that puts us well above what we want. We'd probably have to back off a little bit. So that's a really good range to be
I'd
at.
rather go than 2.
Yep, exactly. It's usable. What you're going to look at is available glycogen storage. So
Okay.
looking at how much is stored in the muscle itself and in the liver. And then you can post plan for that. And then it's just a math game from there, right? Okay, if I go out on a fasted run, here's how many grams of carbohydrates I'm burning through. Here's what I already have stored in my muscles. So now it's just subtraction. At a certain point, you're gonna end up having nothing. Your body's gonna say, I know you want me to go this pace, but I physically cannot. Yeah, because I don't have the substrate for the activation.
Nice. So the stored in the muscles is similar to that like glycogen tank that we keep? And
Yeah.
athletes tend to keep a larger storage?
Right, and yes, and also keep in mind when I talk to triathletes, your cycling is going to be very different than your running, right? Because cycling, we're not using as much upper body as we are running. So typically the available storage is going to be a little different, or utilization, I should say, is going to be different. So zone 2 on the bike, you're probably going to use less, right, or more. I mean, it's really independent of the person.
Okay.
But I always tell people that's why it's not apples and apples.
Sure.
Cycling and running.
Just use it for both.
Exactly. So. How often do you spend in the low 7s, 6s?
Just on speed work.
Speed
really.
work, yeah. And that could be repeat, mile repeats,
Yeah,
things
exactly.
like that. Okay.
That's where I am right now, 6:45 to 7 on a lot of repeats.
Okay.
1 mile, maybe up to 2 mile, 3 mile. More at the 7.
That was 4.1, which is like just on the line of threshold, essentially.
Okay.
So, probably tells me just based on, and again, RPE, perceived exertion, there's no wrong answer with it, right? It's just how you perceive it. But
Sure.
if you do perceive it as like a 8 or kind of upwards up there, and we're kind of hovering right around threshold, I mean, just knowing your background, I would just say you've done a really good job of kind of building that aerobic base. And it just tracks with what you're talking about, that you haven't been doing a ton of speed work, haven't been doing a ton of that stuff right now. Because what it tells me is we still have a lot of room to go. What'll be good for you with what we're looking at is, so with the protocol software we use, we get not only VO2 information, but we get VLamax information.
What's that?
So VO2 is going to be your aerobic capacity. VLamax is your anaerobic capacity. So when people do a VO2 test, they get their threshold. It's not really showing you which energy system is contributing more to that threshold, because both of them contribute. So when you get the report, what you'll see is kind of some gauges of, okay, your VO2 might be almost maxed out, but that VLamax is really, really low. Okay, that just shows that all you've been doing probably is more aerobic work, and we're not pushing any anaerobic. And your threshold's like doesn't have much room to improve. Now, the moment you start working on that VLA, right, that anaerobic system, now we kind of open up the doors. Vice versa. Sometimes I'll see people with a high anaerobic, effort, or that VLamax is
a lot of HIIT works.
exactly. And think of it as that VLamax is the house, and the VO2 is the foundation underneath of it. You can only build that house so big without having enough foundation. So they both are very important to go together. And so that's where we're seeing, like, you've probably built a really good foundation. And now the information we're going to find out is how much can you push, like where's our room to grow. And with where you're at right now and what you're training for, I should preface, it's not as dire to get just that true VLamax. If you were saying, I want a podium 5K, 10K, half, then we really dial that number, but we want to see, where's our room? How far can we go?
Cool.
But it's more just looking at how they work together and where those opportunities lie. 3.3, it's below 3.5, which is what we want. So this could be the last 6-minute effort. I say could be because it kind of depends on what we're looking at, but we're trending in the right direction. It's going to be around a 6:30 pace.
Oh wow.
So
For 6 minutes?
for 6 minutes. Usually that's the
wow.
That's the oh wow phase, is the third phase. Now, with that being said, if we haven't spent much time there, we'll be able to get good information even if you wanted to go like a 6:40 range. So I wouldn't go any slower than a 6:40 though, because now we're getting too close to the 7:10 that we just did. But I also want to make sure that from an injury standpoint, stuff like that, you're comfortable doing this.
I'm not going to hurt myself. That will be new for me to go for 6 minutes at that pace since the injury, but I don't think it's not doable. I think that's probably a 9.5, 10 effort for me.
What I'll say from the data standpoint,
Yeah.
you can do it.
Okay, cool.
Because mathematically, how we've been increasing, you have the ability to do it.
Capacity? All
The
right, let's do it.
only downside to that, right,
Yeah.
glass half empty of that, is leg fatigue, right? So if you haven't been doing the speed work, that might kick in prior to the lungs. But from a lactic acid standpoint, the one we just
Okay,
did was
cool.
around 4. We basically have another 4 millimoles of range plus that we can work with prior to an all-out phase. So.
Well, I haven't done speed work where I was complaining about my leg, so it's more of a lung thing. So I'll just try to suck up the lung for 6 minutes. But
Yeah.
No, let's go for it.
Worst case scenario, if you need to just
get
straddle the belt, do it. So, yeah.
It's hard to stay still.
It is, right? Yeah. Your body.
Body's probably saying we want to work this out.
Exactly. And what we want to know is how efficient is your aerobic system at just kicking in and just like utilizing, because lactic acid gets a bad rap, but pyruvate really
Can we
like
use his energy?
exactly. So it's not it's going to happen. Like you're going to produce it, you know, at any point. It's the first your anaerobic system kicks in and it shoots out that byproduct. Your aerobic system warms up, it utilizes the byproduct.
Cool.
At a certain point, it can't handle it, and that's when we get it shuttled into the blood, into that muscle. So that's end up essentially what we measure then.
What is that point where you can't clear it fast enough?
Exactly. So the other aspect of this, though, is if you look at kind of old school testing methods, like your typical step test, every 3 minutes we increase speed. So that's what
Like
we
a
used.
ramp on the bike.
It's what we used to do. But if you think about it, if we increase pace, increase speed, you're going to produce lactic acid, right? It's just we know that. So what we want to measure really is the efficiency of utilization. So
More of a time at a stable.
exactly, you
rate.
got it. The other kind of fun fact about previous protocols that a lot of people still use, which isn't as accurate. Kind of that ramp test, and it's better than nothing. Don't get me wrong. Like it gives you data, and you know, you're already recovering. It's good. 6.8. Again, like, and that's kind of your standardized FTP test. It's going to be you hold for 20 minutes, which again, better than nothing. Is it the best? No, but it is a method or a protocol that almost everybody has access to, right? It's kind of fail-proof, unless you don't know how to just not necessarily maintain, but have that work over time, perseverance essentially. So, but you know, other protocols would say, like your data, for example, first phase was round 3, then we had around 4, and then now we hit 7. So older protocols would say 2 millimoles above threshold, which threshold typically is 4 millimoles.
Okay.
Some coaches have certain things to say about that.
2 above for what?
So other protocols would say once you get 2 millimoles over threshold, you're good. You have your data. We know now everything beyond this point, right, is going to be purely anaerobic. Along with that, it would cap you at 10. So they would say once you get about 10 millimoles, that's max, what used to be perceived as max. I've seen athletes get to 15, you know, 16. So really those other protocols cap you on kind of opening the doors to potential. So you get information, which is good, right? Better than nothing. But if you really want to see, but what can I go do? Not where's my cap, you know, how am I doing versus what can I progress to? So that's kind of just as a thought, you know, when you do look, because you probably get a lot of different, information, tests, stuff like that. It's just always good to see and really critically think, from a practical application standpoint, but also when you think about like your RAMP, right, your step test. Yeah, you're going to produce lactic acid as you progressively increase intensity. So what are you specifically wanting to get out of that test is what I would ask yourself.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. Good. Catch your breath here. Good. I'm not going to take it right away. We're going to give you about 10, 15 seconds here. Legs, lungs, both.
More legs this time.
Okay.
I think, yeah, we're up towards 17 miles on the day. That's probably why.
Yeah. If you feel like, and I was going to ask you if you felt like you were getting hip extension on the treadmill, or if you felt like the belt was kind of doing some of that work towards the end.
I definitely noticed, that's a good question. I didn't really think about that.
Yeah.
I did notice I was trying to make my steps quicker just to keep up with it. So maybe not in full stride.
Because at a fatigue standpoint, it could be that you've just let some of the treadmill do some of the work. I wouldn't necessarily fully think that, but I do.
Because at that pace, it should have a higher number.
Yeah.
In comparison to the 630.
But if you felt more legs, then I would say leg fatigue kicked in prior to aerobic fatigue, which is what I'm seeing. Okay. So aerobically, we probably had more room to go, right? But as you were noticing,
I wouldn't say that was a max all out.
Aerobic, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So that's then again, we're kind of trending with. So 7-9, so we're kind of just hovering right around the same area here. So what we did today, what our protocol allows us to do is 4 phases, 3 of which are 6-minute efforts. The reason we do 6-minute is we're getting anaerobic and aerobic input here. But we warmed up, took a blood lactate sample after that warm up just to see where we're at. And then we start that first phase. And we got some data from Mike earlier just to really plan out what that first phase was. He ran for 6 minutes. At the end of that phase, we immediately start taking blood lactate samples. The reason we do that right away is because we want to see how much was produced during that effort, how much lactic acid was produced. And then once we start to see his energy system, his aerobic system start to utilize that, and then that number starts to drop, that's when he'll fully recover. He can walk around, things like that, grab some nutrition, some hydration. We don't start that next phase until his lactic acid level is back down to resting. So then we go to that second 6-minute effort, which is going to be faster. Based on the data, we adjust just depending on what that looks like. So we did that 3 times. Each phase took a little more recovery because we had a little more lactic acid production. But then at the very end, we did an all-out phase. So that one was 3 minutes. So put them up there and had them just run as hard as we can for 3 minutes. Grabbed that data as well to create just a full profile.
And we were intentionally bringing my pace down, getting faster, because we intentionally wanted to raise the lactate.
Correct, yes. So first phase, we have a general range of what we anticipate threshold to be. So we hit that threshold mark. And then actually Mike was under threshold for that one. So then that second phase, we increased that pace and then got him right in that range where we wanted threshold to be. So then the third, we increased again because now we want to see what is our peak production. How strong is that anaerobic system? So that's what we did for that third phase. And then for the all out, we really just want to see how strong, how much potential for growth we have from an anaerobic or a speed work standpoint. So think of your aerobic system as your foundation. That anaerobic system is the house you're putting on top of it. You can only get as fast or as powerful is what that aerobic foundation really allows you to do. So first phase was to see what are we looking at foundationally, and then every phase after that is basically how big of a house can we put on that foundation.
And just to give you an idea of the pacing for me specifically, this morning I ran 12 and a half miles. That's a zone 2 run and averaged an 8:07 pace. That's pretty standard for me right now, between a 7:50, 8:10 for a zone 2 for a long run. That's my fitness, obviously, for the Ironman distance. I'm more focused on spending a lot of time in zone 2. So 80% plus of my workouts are at that zone. So I'm more comfortable riding that than some of these anaerobic paces we got. We were talking about earlier, it's different between whether my legs are getting fatigued versus my lungs. I'm not a sprinter, especially since breaking my neck. The last thing my neurosurgeon or my PT wanted me doing was anything too high stress on my spinal cord. So I would say I'm pretty happy that I've gotten my fitness back, 3 months back to running, to be able to hold that pace. And then what we did, the first one was at a 7:45 pace for 6 minutes. That had me, if you want to correlate to heart rate, about 149, I believe.
Yes.
At the end of 6 minutes. Then we dropped down to a 7:10. That brought me up to a 159 heart rate. And then our all-out 6 minute, or not all-out, but our phase 3 was a 6:30 pace, and we came up to 169. So it looks like adding 10 heart rate each time. And then my all-out pace was 5:55 pace. Just to give you guys some reference point.
Yeah.
Definitely, maybe in the future. I don't think the 12 and a half miles this morning affected me too much, obviously, to not be able to do the test. Maybe by the all-out phase, I was feeling the fatigue. I did that because this weekend we've got a huge cold front coming in, and it's going to be below freezing, and I'd rather knock out the long run. And for Alyson, she lives in Houston, but they also do this remotely, right?
Yep, we do it remotely. We'll travel Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, Houston-based. But yeah, we have a lot of athletes spread across the country, really, and different teams that we'll fly out to work with as well. So
amazing. And the only other thing I'd just like you, for me and probably for our audience as well, can you just describe a little bit more, what is lactate? Why is it entering the body? Because I don't fully understand that.
Absolutely. So lactic acid gets a bad rap. It's not a horrible thing. It's going to happen, right? What we want to avoid, though, is it, accumulating in the bloodstream too early, right, with what our goal is. So when your anaerobic system, which is the first energy system to kick in, it shoots out a byproduct, which is pyruvate, which, layman's terms, we end up hearing as lactic acid. But when your aerobic system starts to warm up, it utilizes that lactic acid as energy and fuel. At a certain point, though, that aerobic system can't handle the amount of pyruvate, or lactic acid essentially, that anaerobic system is pumping out, and that's when it gets shuttled into the bloodstream. So what tends to happen is, a good example is, you're doing hill sprints, or you hit an incline on a training run and those legs start to feel pretty heavy. Some strength, associated with that, but that lactic acid buildup, you can feel that heaviness in your legs. That's what that is. It's muscle breakdown as well. So the soreness that you feel after. And then one of the best ways to get rid of that is getting oxygen into the bloodstream to flush that lactic acid out. So best thing to do if you feel that soreness, or if we have a lot of that accumulation, is walk, a light jog, hop on the bike for recovery. Swimming's pretty good as well. Worst thing to do is just sit around, because then it's just going to sit in those legs. So like I said, you're going to produce that lactic acid, but we just want to make sure that your body is working efficiently to utilize it the best way possible for what your specific goal is. 5K runner, 10K runner, you're going to utilize that much differently than Ironman, ultra marathon runner, things like that. So that's why it's really, really important to dial in specifically what your physiology is doing to work for you or against you.
Yeah, it's very interesting to understand that, like you said, that lactate can actually be, your body is using it as energy.
Yes.
And then also a typical speed workout at the track, I never understand, well, in the beginning they would say, I don't know, take 60 seconds rest or 90 seconds rest. But now as we're getting more advanced, instead of the rest, it just turned it into a 200 or a 400 jog.
Yeah.
And initially I didn't like that because I just came from an all-out effort.
Right.
But that makes sense if you're saying that's actually helping you clear it
Well,
quicker.
and on that point, you know, let's say you do a 400 and then you have a 200-meter recovery. That's potentially not enough time for you to clear that lactic acid out. So you have to know that if you're doing a workout like that, you could be continuing to accumulate more and more lactic acid. So what's very important to do is make sure you're cooling down after, because that cool down is what's going to fully let you kind of clear that lactic acid out to really help you prep for the next day. So a lot of times to get that full recovery in between efforts, we just don't have that much time in a training day. You might only have an hour. You might have 90 minutes or so. So that full recovery, we just might not have that much time. So that's why it's really important to focus on a good warm-up and a good cool down to help flush out any residual lactic acid that's in your system. So
that's great info to have.
And with our testing, we'll be able to give that true, here's a work to rest ratio, here's how much time you need based on the pace that you're running. If it is, you'll get training zones that'll have the specific intervals in there of accumulation. So if you do an 800 and 1,000 meter, you know, how much lactic acid is accumulating, what kind of recovery you need from that. But again, never ignore the warm-up or the cool-down because there is physiological benefits and reasoning why that is in your program.
Yeah, and another cool thing she was able to do was to put in my numbers into the computer, and that gives an exact data. And we laughed about it because there might be the perceived effort of what I think I can do. And she's like, well, the computer actually says that you can hold a 555.
Yep.
And so I did it because I didn't want to wanted to prove myself right. But this is just great data, like Alyson said, to be able to take to my coach, a little bit more dialed in than maybe your Garmin or your Strava is. And we can find out exactly what I want to be training at. And then in the Ironman, I'd like to come in around 9.5, 10 hours. So we're going to have over an hour swim. Then I got to hop on a bike for 4.5 hours. Really important to understand how hard do I want to be pushing where I don't blow up on the run.
Exactly.
And then don't want to go straight into the run and think I can hold a 7-minute pace when I should be backing off.
Yeah, and another point I'll add just to that is, especially with triathlon runners, any general population getting into fitness, nutrition's big. And one thing that we were talking about earlier was just based on your body fat percent, your muscles, you have glycogen, which is carbohydrate storage. So a lot of times people will underfuel when they train. Somebody, you know, is training for an Ironman or any level triathlon, you have to fuel appropriately on the bike to set you up for the run, even if you're doing a marathon, half marathon, or just general, you know, running for exercise. Fueling your body is important. And so knowing, you know, how many carbohydrates you need daily to replenish what muscle mass you have or what you've depleted on that run, just for a health standpoint, is really, really important as well.
Yeah, that was a final point as well. A recommendation, maybe I can go and get a DEXA scan if I want a really accurate body fat percentage. Like Alyson said, my body holds a certain amount of glycogen dependent on the amount of muscle I have. I would like to lose 5 to 10 pounds as we get closer to the race, but as I explained to Alyson, I'd rather do that in losing a bit of body fat and keep as much muscle as I can to be able to hold a higher tank.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. If you live in Austin or in Texas, you can schedule through RunLab for you as well. And I'll also put your information in our caption below in case anyone's out of the state or country and wants to work with you.
Happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.